Kereta ni nampak bergaya kan? Ganas, menacing even. This is the Peugeot 408 and it is the first Peugeot car launched under Stellantis Malaysia. Now, the best reason to get this C-segment vehicle is definitely for its looks. But priced from 146,000 ringgit to 196,000 ringgit for this range-topping GT variant, it does cost quite a bit of money. However, I will argue that it is a fair price for a car of this caliber. We'll find out in this review of the Peugeot 408. Let's talk about what exactly is the 408 first. While it looks like a sedan or an SUV, it is actually neither. According to Peugeot, it defies categorization and it belongs in a segment of its own. It's a bit hard sell, but I do agree with that statement to a certain extent. It's not exactly an SUV because it is not quite tall enough. It is also not a sedan because it is not quite low enough. Instead, I would think of it as being slightly higher than a sedan's height with the practicality of an SUV, as you'll see in the rear end of the 408 later on. The front end of the 408 is very handsome. There's the 408 branding, this large Peugeot logo, equally large grille, fang-shaped LED running lights as you see here, and of course, for this GT variant, matrix LED lighting technology. All in all, this looks like a very handsome car. The side profile of the 408 remains very sporty, very handsome. I really cannot overstate this. For the GT variant, you've got huge 20-inch alloy wheels that Peugeot calls Monolith Black. It's an interesting name, but I do have to say it is one of the sexiest wheels I've ever seen. Now, this is a good chance to talk about something that I don't quite like about the 408. It technically has a keyless entry system, but it requires me to approach the car for it to unlock. And there is no button on the door handle, so I can't press the button to lock or unlock the car. Instead, I have to walk away and pray that it locks the car in time before somebody wants to gain entry to the car. It works most of the time, but I just wish there is a way for me to lock it from the door handle. The rear end of the 408 is also very sexy. It looks futuristic, the slim headlights look great, and as I've mentioned before, it has the practicality of an SUV because if I open up the boot, it reveals 536 liters of space. And because this car isn't particularly tall, the low height makes it easier to transport heavier items as well. Very nice. But I did have one small issue as I was traveling with this car. The boot wouldn't close for some reason, so I had to manually close it, open it back up, and if I press it again, it works just fine. It's just a little bit of an oddity that I would like to mention. Once you get inside the 408, you'll be greeted by a lot of toys, and it's also a very nice space to be in. The steering wheel is a little bit too tiny than what I'm used to, but it does feel quite nice to drive the car with. The 3D instrument panel looks fantastic, and I especially like this infotainment system. There are two screens here. There's the main one as well as the bottom one, which can be customized to different buttons depending on what you want. If I were to nitpick though, I would say it'll be better if there are physical aircon controls. The only physical thing here is just this to access the on-screen climate control, which is not ideal, especially if I want to change up the temperature as I am driving. Of course, there is also wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it works seamlessly. Every time I enter the car, it will just launch Apple CarPlay as and when I need it. Besides wireless Apple CarPlay, there is also a wireless charger down here. So just put your phone there, it will launch Apple CarPlay and you can be off on your way. That being said, I do wish there's a bit more space for me to reach my phone because it feels a little bit awkward to reach down here and pull out my phone and probably scratch some of these parts, which is not nice. But what is nice is the availability of massage option for this range-topping GT variant. Both the driver and the front passenger seats get this massage feature and it's fantastic. Speaking of seats, the driver's seat is also very comfortable. After all, it's designed by AGR as well, which is supposedly a body that knows what a comfortable chair is. So that's fantastic. There's plenty of thigh support. I can change the height of the front as well as the height of the seat overall, and it's just comfortable. I love it. I'd also like to talk about the audio quality of the 408. This range-topping GT variant gets something called Focal speaker system, and it's quite a famous brand. While I am no audiophile, I do think the speaker quality is very good. It's very bassy, mids are clear, and the highs are crispy as well. The back seat of the 408 is relatively comfortable. There's plenty of leg space here, but I am not very tall, as I've said before many times, unfortunately. I'm only about 165 cm tall, so your mileage may vary. Although there's plenty of leg space, I do feel like the thigh support could be a bit better, especially for someone of my height, which is not very tall. So if you're taller, you may not be too comfortable back here. But of course, there is this armrest, and paired with the sunroof here, even though it's just a manual shade, should make for a relatively comfortable space. Now, let's get to the good stuff, the driving impressions. Under the hood of the 408 is a 1.6-litre turbocharged engine that does 218 PS and 300 Nm of torque. These are big numbers for just a 1.6-litre engine. According to Stellantis, this allows the 408 to sprint from 0 to 100 km per hour in 8.8 seconds. This doesn't sound particularly fast, yes, but once I put my foot down on this car, it does still have a good amount of pull. I'm going at about 65 km per hour now, and I just put my foot down. Takes a while to downshift, but once it does, there is a good amount of pull. And if I do say so for myself, the engine note is quite nice. In terms of ride and handling, this car can handle itself quite well, which can be attributed to the low profile tire of the 20-inch wheels. There is a good amount of feedback from the steering wheel, even though it's so tiny. It's actually quite interesting to use, and I can point the car wherever I want to without much hesitance. I can take corners quite aggressively, confidently, and overall, it does feel quite sporty to drive, matching the looks of this car. But the low profile tire of this GT408 does have some shortcomings, such as ride quality. Because the side profile of the tire is so skinny, the road bumps and undulations transfer to the cabin very much. It's fine on the highway, in fact it's fantastic on the highway, but when I take rougher back roads, every single bump that I encounter does transfer to the cabin quite a bit, and it's a little bit uncomfortable. That being said, as the lower variants of the 408 have smaller 18-inch wheels with larger side profile, those are definitely more comfortable than this GT variant. But hey, at least I get some sexy looking 20-inch wheels, so it really depends on your personal preference there. In terms of fuel consumption, I've done about 700 km of driving in the 408, and on average, I'm getting about 12 km per litre. This is definitely decent for a C-segment car, and it's about the same fuel consumption that I get with my Civic, which has a CVT instead of an 8-speed automatic found in the 408. I do have to say that I am quite a heavy-footed driver, so if you're more economical, you may be able to get better figures. Next, we have the ADAS of the 408, which is very competent. On the highway, it can match the speed of the car in front, as well as the lane assist is very good. Very central, very human-like driving behavior. I can say with confidence that this is easily one of the best ADAS systems that I have tried, especially for a car at this price point. If I were to nitpick, however, I do wish the driving distance from the car in front is a little bit shorter. But again, as with any ADAS system, they do have more distance for safety reasons. Last but not least is the NVH of the 408, which is great. In terms of noise isolation, even though I'm going at the national speed limit of 110 km per hour, wind noise is very minimal, but tire roar is quite evident, which again can be attributed to the fact that these are skinny 20-inch wheels. Okay, I'm going at about 70 km per hour now. I'm gonna put my foot down. Oof, nice. Okay, at about 110 km per hour, you can hear for yourself, wind noise is very minimal, but the tire roar is quite loud. But hey, it's a fun, sporty car to drive, and I personally quite like it, and I can accept this level of road noise. So is the Peugeot 408 worth getting? Well, that really depends on whether or not you're willing to pay that kind of money for the looks of this car. Yes, for 196,000 ringgit, you can easily get an EV with much faster performance, but it won't be quite as pretty as this car, and I personally have never had so many strangers approach me and tell me how good this car looks. If you're keen to get it, just go to a Peugeot dealership and test drive it for yourself. You may fall in love with how it looks, and you may even fall in love with the sporty driving characteristic of this GT variant. So that is our review of the Peugeot 408. It's an absolutely beautiful car and I cannot get enough of it. If you like this video, leave a like, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and always stay tuned for more good stuff to come here on this channel and nextreview.com.